Ashley here. I know most of you already know me. I'm the owner of Alchemy, and I am here today with Emma Stevenson.
Hi!
And Emma actually just moved here recently and is a physical therapist. She's trying to build her practice, and we connected through actually a whole bunch of different people who highly recommended her already. She's only been here a couple months, right?
Yeah, just a couple, yeah.
So what we're trying to do between Emma and myself and her business, Atomic PT and Alchemy of Movement, is we're trying to kind of develop a little bit of a partnership here. I find in my experience dancing is that almost everyone who comes to the studio is just gets wrapped up in the joy of dance and the joy of movement, and none of us really like to go to the gym. We don't really like to go and do personal training or physical therapy, but we all get injured. And so then all of us kind of want a quick fix to figure out how we can get back dancing again. So part of what we're hoping to do here is get all of you a connection to a physical therapist who you can kind of ask some questions to. I think what we're hoping to do in the future, we already have a Ask a PT weekend on the books with Emma, so that'll be really, really fun. That's January 7th and 8th. And she's just gonna be here during classes, and you can come, whether or not you're in a class, you can just come and ask her some questions, totally free for you. And she's not gonna do any manual work or anything on you, but you could just ask her and be like, hey, I've had this ongoing knee pain forever. Where should I start? And just kind of give you some background. And then Emma can answer some of your questions. So we want to do this little interview so you kind of got to know her a little bit. And yeah, we're really excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. I can't wait to meet everyone and just get stuck in and get going. So I think it'll be great. And I really hope to see a lot of you at the Ask a PT weekend. The more the merrier, and put me to the test. Let me answer all of your questions. So I think that would be great.
We want wine out the door.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. So Emma, would you just tell us a little bit about your background and how some of your experience can also translate to dancers, injuries, things like that, and we just would love to know more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of got started in maybe the performing world when I was 6. I did gymnastics for my whole life. So from the age of 6 until 22, I was a gymnast. I moved up through the years, and then I ended up being a gymnast at the University of Iowa. So I competed there for 4 years. I had my fair share of injuries, my fair share of rehab, and from those experiences, I feel like I really understood the mental and physical toll it takes, and also I have a little bit more of that hands-on knowledge of what it feels like to be in that performing world and get through those injuries. From there, I did get my doctorate in physical therapy and graduated about 4 years ago from Clark University in Dubuque. So it's just a little tri-state border school. And then I pretty much got stuck right into the sports and performing arts world. I worked with Olympic gymnasts and endurance athletes and ballerinas and professional dancers, and I really just felt like, there was so much to be done that was not really ever focused on in that realm. So I feel like, football and basketball, those are always your typical sports rehab injuries that people focus on, but the performing arts world didn't have a lot of it. So I felt like I really did a lot of research and had a lot of experience with that population, and there's just so much you can do. And it's fun. It doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't have to be your typical, do this one exercise forever and ever, and then you'll be fine. There's a lot of great things you can do that are super specific with dance or gymnastics or whatever performing art you choose. From there, I ended up moving to London for 2 years, and I worked on the Broadway musical Frozen. So I was there. Yeah, I was their primary physio, so they call it physio there, but I was their physical therapist. So I was on site in the theater world. I did all the rehab for the cast and crew, and the Elsas and Annas and all the characters.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was really fun. I got to do that, and I think that fast-paced environment really, prepared me for handling. Someone's injured. How do I fix that quickly? How do I make it functional and get them pain-free? And so that experience really then propelled me to think I want to do this myself. I'm really having a great time doing this, but I want to create create my own community, create my own culture, and start to give back to my own community, like I said. So we ended up moving here in July and started Atomic Physical Therapy. And our mission is just to keep people doing what they love. Whether that's dance, whether that's going outdoors, whether that's going from nothing to something. We don't have to be at the top tier of everything we're doing. We could be anywhere in that whole spectrum. And so for me, I just really like to help people, be happy and healthy and then doing what they love. And so from my experience as a gymnast and just an active person, I take those experiences and those hands-on things and apply them and just meet everybody where they're at. Everybody's journey is different, and I don't expect two people to be the same, even if their injury is the same. So it's kind of my continuum, and now we're building and trying to just get in with the right communities. And obviously, when you and I met, like you said, from so many different avenues, it just felt like it was meant to be. And we came here and did a class, and I was like, oh, I love it. I want to be a part of this community. So like I said, I'm really excited to meet everybody and, hopefully get, join the community.
Yay! We're really excited to have you. That's so cool that George on Frozen.
Yeah, it was fun. It was super cool. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm kind of going off script now, but what were some of the injuries that you saw that were more common, like in the theater world?
Yeah, it's actually a good question. And so a lot of it is like partner work. So a lot of the dancers did a lot of partnering. And so in Frozen specifically, they had really big costumes, really heavy. So they'd wear these dresses, and they were like 20 to 40 pounds of just dress. And so the girls would have to figure out how to posturally stand without getting back pain or foot pain. They'd have loads of foot pain with the shoes they were wearing. And then the guys, would be lifting them, and they had to have this, really good ability to be able to lift these women over their head without sagging, and they had to work on that shoulder stability and core. So the first couple of weeks of what's called tech, where they really kind of put them on stage and, figure out the lighting and all that stuff, I had loads of shoulders from the boys, loads of calves, and Achilles from the girls, because they were always in those high heels. They went from high heel to barefoot to high heel to barefoot to high heel to barefoot 5 times in the show. And so they that was the big things. And then I would have other random injuries, the Sven was a completely different thing, because they were like a puppet and they had all this extra weight on them. But for the most part, I would say if I had to categorize it into the two, the men tended to have the shoulder issues and the women were more the lower body.
Interesting.
I got really, really efficient at treating those.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like, that kind of brings us to one of my questions to you, but I think one of the more common things that people experience here is they'll come from the streets wearing wedges, sometimes heels, and then they just hop right into barefoot dancing, and I'm like, don't!
Here we go,
right? And so I'm glad that you brought that up, because we are going to kind of get into footwear a little bit today and talk about that, but I think just that constant drastic change can really, really...
It definitely does, yeah. The first-hand experience, it does, and it's okay. We can work around it, but it's definitely, you just have to expect it. It's hard to expect your body to adapt that quickly,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I try to tell people it's kind of I don't know, you haven't been in the gym for 5 years, and then all of a sudden you go and try to deadlift 500 pounds.
Yeah,
no, nobody would ever do that. You have to work up to it.
Yeah.
You start with 10, and then you go to 20, and then you go to 30, right? The same way with, your feet are muscles and joints and bones, and they're adapted
the
same way.
Yeah, they need to be adapted or
so you need to to learn how to be strengthened to do something like that.
Absolutely.
So,
spot on.
anyways,
She knows. You got what you need me for. You got it. Yeah.
Well, I like the confirmation, that what I believe is actually true.
At least from my book, that is correct.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for the introduction. That's awesome. Really, really excited you're here. Before we send you on your way and prepare ourselves for our first Ask a PT session, I just wanted to ask maybe 2 questions and kind of get your thoughts on, stuff for dancers. So the first question, and this is common stuff that I get as questions from our clients, and so we just want to know from a PT, hey, what's kind of the best option, or what are the best things to do here? So question number 1 is, what are some of your injury prevention tips for dancers? I know that's a really broad thing to answer, but just generally speaking, what can we do to protect our bodies and stay healthy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question, and I think that is like the forefront of how I like to treat, is like giving education in ways that you can help yourself, because ultimately injuries don't last forever, and so we want to make sure that we can get ourselves back and doing what we like to do. And so how I kind of approach injury prevention is like from a 3-prong. So, you know, there's stuff you can do before class or before your activity. There's stuff you can do immediately, like during it, and then there's stuff you can do after. And so those 3 things, if they're done well and done together, can be kind of the most efficacious, for lack of a better word.
Makes a lot of sense.
So when I talk about before, I just think about like kind of the obvious ones, you know, making sure you've actually drank some water during the day, making sure you've actually eaten like some relevantly good food, and you know, also that you've had some good sleep. Those things are like the basics. I think everybody knows those, but they're very easily underrepresented, or at least you don't think about them, because we always think about movement, and I think movement's huge, of course, but that is an important aspect of it as well. And also
Can I interject and ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Can you just speak a little bit as to like why that's important? Because I think, you know, I have a general sense of why, you know, drinking water is important and getting good sleep, but like how does that affect your bodies and increase like your risk of injury if you don't get those things?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take water. Like you said, that, you know, there's kind of a range of what you should drink per day, and I think the studies change all the time. But like typically, if you're thirsty, you're dehydrated. So you should never be thirsty throughout the day. And if you are dehydrated, it just increases your risk for cramping, which can then lead to you rolling an ankle, or it could just lead to a strain or something like that because your muscles aren't adequately hydrated. Our bodies are like, I didn't look at the stat, but something like 70% water or 60. It's like a really high percentage of water. Yeah. And if we're dehydrated, that impacts all of our systems. That can lead to, you know, if we're talking in more acute settings, like it could lead to confusion. It can lead to a lot of depletion of like very necessary minerals and things in our body, so, or electrolytes. So that kind of thing, just keeping yourself hydrated will in and of itself be huge. Sleep is another like crazy one that, like, for me, if I had a pyramid, sleep for me is on the bottom. That has to come first. I'm pretty crazy about it. You could ask my boyfriend, he knows. If I'm not in bed by the time I want to be in bed, I'm immediately cranky because I know I need my sleep and I have to have those 7.5 to 8 hours. And that just is everything. That's recovery, that's repair, that's mental, that's physical. I mean, you know, that's a whole nother topic, you know, we could go into, but that don't ever jeopardize your sleep. And then food as well. Look, food's a difficult one because there's so much of it. It's all over the place. You know, we want to enjoy our lives, but we also want to be healthy. How do we balance that? I say, you know, whatever you're eating, if you could just try to have a vegetable or a fruit or have something that has fiber or protein that's like healthy protein, even things like, you know, choosing chicken over steak, you know, or going vegetarian and having quinoa, right? Or something that just gives you that protein and good fats and good carbs, and not worrying about one food group too much, just making sure you have a good variety. That helps rebuild, repair muscles, it keeps you healthy, and it does prevent injury, because if you have adequate nutrition, you're not in a deficit, you're not gonna lead to a muscle strain because you don't have enough protein to help repair muscle, or, you know, you're not gonna be so fatigued because you don't have the right amount of nutrition that you're gonna pass out because you're hungry. Little things like that can make a big difference, and so just eating relatively healthily, don't like be hard on yourself, but just try your best to incorporate those good foods. Will make a huge difference. And yeah, I can go into greater detail as well. You know, if people come on the weekend and want to chat to me more about it, it's kind of like the soapbox outside of physical therapy that I think really needs to be addressed in all healthcare. But I'm physical therapy, so that's where I address it more. But yeah, does that answer?
Totally. Yeah. That's exactly what I was hoping for. You
Yeah.
know? And like it reminds me, like my first ACL tear was an impromptu rehearsal, or not rehearsal, it was practice. I was playing tennis.
Yeah.
It was in college, and the captains like called us at 8 a.m. and they were like, practice right now! And I like ran down there, you know.
Well, your cortisol's all over the place. You're stressed.
Yeah, and like we didn't warm up properly, you know, and it was a cold morning.
Yeah.
I didn't get my breakfast, didn't get my water, whatever.
Not ideal.
And it was like, 15 minutes in, and I was like on the floor, you know.
Oh, it's such a shame, yeah.
Yeah, but you know,
But yeah, I mean, you know firsthand.
fascinating. I mean, the body is like blows my mind.
That's crazy. The more you learn, the less you know.
I know, it's so cool. I love it so much. Okay, awesome. Thanks.
So yeah, and then also with, yeah, of course, and with injury prevention as well, like I was going to lead into is like cross training. So, you know, as dancers specifically, most of us are hypermobile. We have crazy mobility around certain joints, and then a lot of rigidity in other joints, and that can just, it's like a good concoction for an injury. So what you need to do is just make sure once or twice a week doing a resistance training class, whether it's bold here, I mean, they offer it already for you, a part of everything you do. Or if you really feel like you want to do something different, like weight training, just like anything that's making it harder for you than just your body weight, typically. So, you know, for example, for me, like my hips are crazy mobile. I need to do a lot of like hip strengthening stuff to decrease my risk for injury. That's for me when I ski, or if I were to hike, or if I come to a dance class. I tell you, anytime I dance and I haven't danced in a while and I haven't strengthened my hips, my back and my knees hurt automatically. So, and I know the difference if I've trained them. So that can't be underestimated. Only 1 to 2 times a week. You don't have to commit like in half hour is fine. It doesn't have to be a lot. It's just enough where you're giving those muscles, you know, a little bit of extra overload to strengthen them, and then when you're here, you don't have to worry about it. So that would be like my before injury prevention techniques tips. And then during is like your tried and true. Warm up, you know, cool down, modifications. Those are pretty common. We talk about them all the time. They're maybe not the sexiest, but they are pretty relevant. And warm up, the biggest thing for me is it has to be dynamic. So I think a lot of times in the dance and performing world, we hold our stretches because we want to be flexible.
Static stretches.
Yeah. So we don't need to do that, you know?
Dynamic stretches.
Perfect. You see? Again, she's got it. She knows.
Just, you know.
Yeah, but that's it. So
if you don't know, now you know.
If you don't know, now you know. So doing some dynamic stuff, get the heart rate up, get the blood flowing to the muscles, and do it with what you're doing. So exactly like, that was more of a dance-based dynamic warm-up, right? Because you're actually moving into the positioning where if you were doing like soccer, you would be dribbling the ball. But you don't need to do that here. So I think for me, that's the biggest thing. Like, if you know you're gonna do a hip-hop class, right? If we're getting into deep squats, if we're doing a lot of these like movements that are jerky and holding, you have to make sure you've warmed up those positions. Get yourself into a couple of varieties. Get into like a normal deep squat here. Push your knees out. Kind of get yourself into lunges and move yourself back and forth, and try to get your body warm and your hips warm so that when you do drop into those positions, it's not the first time you did that today. And it's not in an uncontrolled manner. So that's a huge one for me, where I feel like if you can warm up dynamically and feel warm before, you're gonna feel good. And then during the class, like if you have to modify, like don't be too proud, you know? Like if you can't hit a position, but you can hit close to it and it doesn't hurt, preferable to do that and build yourself up to it. Like some of the stuff that you'll be doing will be challenging, and that's the fun of dance, pushing yourself and building your coordination and your all of these things, but you can't just throw yourself into it and expect to not have maybe some repercussions. Or talk to the wonderful instructors, let them know you have some issues going in, and say like, hey, I know this is like, let's say a hip hop class. Is there anything I could do that would keep me going, but maybe not have to be just like a certain move I've done before that hurts, you know? Just like talk through it. They know the class, they're the ones teaching it. So that would be, those are like the two like things before and during in that like during section of the class, and then cooling down. I mean, that's the hardest one for me personally, and to get people to do, because we're busy. We want to get the heck out of here, you know? We loved it, great time, good vibes, but I gotta go. And so,
I know, I'll like finish my class or like get to the cool down and like 10 people leave. And I'm like,
yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, so it's like,
what you doing?
And the book's for you.
It's only like 3 to 6 minutes that we have in class. And people are just like, nope, no time for that.
Yeah.
You know?
And honestly, the 3 to 6 minutes, if you can just like do it for yourself, it's such a big difference. Because if you think about it, if you're not cooling down in here, the next place you're gonna be cooling down is sitting in a car. And it's just, forward posture, rounded back. It's just not a great position for your tissue to cool down in. It's fine if you were moving in and out of it, but not ideal when you're driving. So just give yourself that 3 to 5 minutes. Let your body temperature come down. Let your heart rate come down. Kind of sit in some of those positions that were worked a lot. You know, maybe it was a heavy glute session. Just give yourself a stretch, you know? The classic figure 4, it doesn't have to be anything brain defying, right? It's probably more fun to do it here anyway, because it'll be to music and it'll be with the energy. So just give yourself that time, and that in and of itself will make such a big difference.
Is it true, or would you say that it's generally true that like dynamic stretches, like the moving stretches, those are better in the beginning, and then the static stretches are better as cool down things? Yeah,
absolutely. I meant to say that, so thank you for bringing it up. So yeah, dynamic warm-up, static cool down. And the reason being is that static stretching has been shown to decrease power output. So like as a gymnast, all we did was static, and like looking back, I'm like, probably not the right thing to do. We should have probably just worked in the range that we needed for the mobility we had, and then really pushed the, flexibility at the end of the day. So yeah, if you're coming here, probably better not to just sit in like a middle split, leaning forward, chatting to people. Great for the social, but maybe just move it a little bit, keep moving while you're chatting and get that kind of vibe going. And then after, if you want to sit in a position for a long time, have at it. That's fine. It's just better as well for the recovery. So yeah, that's great. Thanks for bringing that up. And then for me, so I did before, during, and then after, it, can kind of blend into before if we leave it long enough. But really the one or two things I'll say about after is, it's kind of coupling with the cool down is to actually have recovery days. So if you are quite an active person, which I think the average person in Boulder, from what I'm learning, is very, very active. So if you do feel that you work out almost every day, or if not every day, I really would encourage you to actually take a day off. I know that's sometimes controversial, but actually your tissue really just does need the time to recover. It needs the time to regenerate. If you're doing all the other right things, but you're just never taking a day off, there's been so many studies that show, if you had two people, let's say identical twins, and they had the same program except for one just never took a rest day, the one that rested was better. So it's just one of those things where, and active rest doesn't have to be couch potato status, mind you. It just means you're not elevating heart rate dramatically, you're not doing crazy resistance training, or you're not on your feet for an extended period of time, but going for a nice walk with family, or doing a bike ride around your neighborhood, or a very low-key hike. All that stuff is fine. It's just not being at your peak fitness, whatever that peak is for you. So that is a big one to consider. And then really kind of almost a shameless plug, but not really, because I would tell this to anybody, if you've done all of these things and you're feeling good, or you're not feeling good after all of these things that I've recommended, you probably would benefit from an assessment from a physical therapist. And probably me, because I do have a great dance background and I understand the dance world, but anybody, I don't want to limit you to me. If you have other people you've met, that's fine. Just make sure that you take that time and have that assessment, because your knee pain could be a result of a bad hip, or your hip pain could be a result of the way your foot's positioned, or your back pain could be the result of a breathing issue. So there's so many things that can lead to injury that even if you do all the best things you can do, you just need help. I would have to go to a therapist. I can't treat myself. I can look at myself in a mirror, but it's just hard to treat yourself. So you don't be ashamed or feel like you can't ask for help. It is such a valuable tool, and I would really recommend that as if you feel like all these other things aren't working, or if you feel like they are kind of working but you just want an assessment, also great. That's what we specialize in, is preventative therapy. It doesn't always have to be reactive, it can be proactive. So that is kind of how I would view the after, because it's after the fact of all these other preventative strategies. If they're just not really cutting the mustard, then you might just need a little more help, and that's fine, because it sets you up for life a little bit more that way. So yeah, I would say those are my kind of before, during, and after tips. Again, if you come to the weekend in January, I can go more in depth on any of these topics if you feel like you're I kind of want to know more about that or whatever, and we can dive into those a little bit more as well. But that would be kind of my overarching theme to a very general question.
And you did a great job.
Yeah.
That was a very,
going,
very large. I know, and everything that you said, I have more questions about.
Yeah. We could do another segment if we need to as well.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing that came up in that was the recovery time.
Yeah.
Right? And you said not necessarily couch potato, and I am wondering, because what I've understood about recovery is that your recovery day shouldn't be couch potato.
No, I think people think I don't want to just especially people who are very active, I can't sit still all day, and that's fine. I think again, back in my day when I was a gymnast, I think there wasn't 100% clarity on what that rest day looked like, and so I always felt on my rest day I was I won't move, I need to rest, and I think really that probably did me more harm than good. And you're right, the research is showing more and more that your body is meant to move, so it's not that you need to not be active, it's just that you need to bring your intensity back for a day, at least to very much what we consider a sub-maximal intensity. Like I said, the heart rate should be low. You shouldn't be exerting yourself where you're or you're sweating, whatever, unless it's a hot day, then it's a different story, you're going to be sweating. But
now for those of us super uber duper ambitious people, theoretically, could you have a recovery day from one workout doing a different workout? Could I do arms and core one day, and then my recovery day for that is the next day when I'm doing legs? Or is that not what you?
Yes and no. I think could probably like finagle the system a bit that way. You have to think about like either way you're still using like glucose stores, and there's like a more physiological reasoning behind that rest day. But yes, like you're less likely to injure yourself if you are doing the more gym-based approach where you're doing a push day, upper body, and then a pull day the next day, or you know you're doing legs and arms and core. Like that is the way that you would potentially like approach lifting. I think dance can be a little bit harder because you're always on your feet. Most dancers don't dance on their hands. Maybe a little if you're breakdancing or doing a move, but it is typically weight bearing on the legs, and that's, I guess, when I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about this community, and like you really do need a day off, especially if you're not used to hardwood floors, just to give yourself a break, or like do the bold class. Like that would be a kind of a good rest because it's not the same intensity, and so that would almost be a great way, like kind of what you're saying. It's coupling the dance, or it's coupling, you know, your exercise, but it's not gonna like wear you out or burn out your tissue.
It's not like there's no impact in it, right? Which is like
no, and that's the
kind
thing.
of the big thing is resistance and not impact. And so
So yeah, if you don't want to have like a day where you're just doing something outside of here, like that's great. Come and do these classes that they offer. That's why it's so amazing that you offer them, because you have that ability to keep it all in house, right? You can just do it all here.
Totally. Awesome. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so our second question is a little bit more pointed. I know that first one was very, very general.
Yeah.
But I've found that for most of our dancers, common injuries are feet, knees, and back. And so, and as most of you know, as of the time of this recording, I am taking a month off for my own foot injuries. We have another instructor who is also taking some time off for Achilles problems. And so I wanted to just kind of ask you if you have any injury prevention or tips for people to care for their feet when they're doing something so intense and high impact as dancing. I mean, it's high impact, it's a lot of twisting, it's a lot of turning, and honestly, like we have people who get injured with shoes, without shoes, wearing hokas, wearing little ballet thing. I mean, everybody kind of has their own thing, their own issues. So, do you have any tips for our dancers to take care of their feet?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I always think it sounds weird when I say this, but like, I do really like feet. I think they're like such a good and underrepresented part of the body.
They're your foundation.
They are, exactly.
They're the most important thing.
That's what we stand on. Yeah, and you know, I think as a gymnast, being barefoot my whole life, I'm like, I get it. You know, I like to be in my feet. I like to feel the ground. I'm like, anytime I have shoes on, I'm like, take them off as quick as I can. You know. So I guess to kind of backtrack that question, I think there's like my top 3 things that I would think of right off the bat for kind of foot prevention, foot care, and just foot understanding, I guess, is the first one is like don't rush the process. So if you're new to dance or if you're new to barefoot life, or both, depending on how you approach the class, your body needs time to adapt. We've kind of touched on this before, and the body is super resilient, super amazing. It can do so many things if you give it time. You can't just assume you can deadlift 500 pounds if you haven't deadlifted in a long time. So, but you could probably eventually lift 500 pounds, just like you can probably dance every day on your feet if you do have the right program and protocol set in place and you've given yourself the time to adjust. So if you think about it, let's take the example of someone who's in shoes during the day but barefoot here. Your foot is enclosed in a shoe. Now there are now shoes that come out that are barefoot shoes, you have wider feet and stuff like that, yeah, that's good, but they're still not barefoot. So your muscles are then pressed into a bit of a shortened position while you're in a shoe, and so they're very good at working in that like range or that positioning. So when you take the shoe off and your feet can splay and be at their normal length, like it changes the dynamics of the muscle, and so it's gonna feel different when you're barefoot, and it's gonna probably hurt and be achy and sore. Also, we have fat pads on the bottom of our feet. Those fat pads are easily irritable, especially when you're on a hard surface. They can build up resilience, just like our hands can get tougher, or we get calluses from running, however you think about that. Like they can build, but you do have to just adapt. And so yeah, that's like the biggest thing for me is like just don't rush it, and don't be worried if you do have some pain here and there. Just give yourself time off in between and build yourself up. Now in the interim, you can use things like taping. You can use certain types of like shoes, like jazz shoes. They can have like the paddings on the bottom or things like that can help. But again, it's only a kind of a semi-solution to a problem. So it's good in the intermediary, but you have to strengthen, which leads to my step 2 kind of thought is you gotta strengthen your feet. So there's about 19 muscles just in the foot. So not above and into the foot, like literally in your foot, there's 19. And then you have 10 more that come in cross. So you have a lot of muscles that from below the knee that you can work on to give you a really good foundation. One of the ones that I like to do with patients that I think usually catches most people by surprise, probably less so in the dance world, but I bet you I could catch a few of you out with it, is what I call toe yoga. So it's just putting your foot flat on the floor and lifting your big toe only, and then pushing your big toe down and lifting your little toes only. So if you can do that, then you at least have some control of your foot, and then we can go from there. But if I work with someone and they can't even do that, then I'm like, homework. Because you should be able, it's like your hands. Like, you have the same muscles in your feet, they're just longer. And you have a little bit less like dexterity, of course. But, I think that is a big one that I always say is strengthening the foot. There's loads of other ways. You can do towel scrunches, you can work on just arch support, you can do a lot of things that will help with the strengthening, and as well as like calf strengthening stuff. And again, that can be elaborated on far more, when I'm here in that weekend. But those things like can't be misunderstood or misused, because if you can strengthen your feet, like it's huge. And then if they're strong, then they can handle the barefoot floor life, or they can handle the variety of shoes you put them in, and things like that. And kind of touching on what we started with the heels to floor kind of thing. If you're wearing heels all day, I guess specifically speaking to more of the women who have jobs where it requires you to be in high heels, or you just love them. I don't like to tell people you can't wear high heels. However, just understand that you have to do a little bit more care, right? You have to give yourself time to stretch your Achilles out, because you're likely going to have an Achilles tendonitis if you're in heels all day and then are flat foot the rest. You just have to know that, like, if you make decisions, you have to know how to work with those decisions. And then again, like for me, like I said, I love feet. I've been barefoot my whole life. So again, if you're feeling like you just want more of a thorough assessment, like again, seeing a PT, it's not like it's a good thing to do. You get a quick kind of assess. Feet are smaller than hips, so they're a lot more straightforward to look at, so it's a lot quicker. You can just look at a foot and give a few things to get started with, and then build from there. Like I said, it's one of my favorite parts of the body to work with, because I just feel like it gives you a lot of improvement if you're actually able to change what you've started with. And everybody, whether you're flat-footed, high-arched, you have a heel that turns one way, if you have a big toe that doesn't move very well, all of these things can impact how your feet feel. And if you have the right kind of guidance to specifically fix those things, it tends to make quite a bit of a difference. And if not, at least then a PT or someone that can help you with the rest of it. So it all just depends. But I think the take home is don't rush it, strengthen your feet, and if you're still struggling, again, get external help. I think that is usually, those would be my biggest things.
Awesome. Thanks. There's so many things in there that you said that I'm like, yeah, I'm doing that. Like the big toe thing. And
yeah.
the little toe
is that why you got excited?
I know. I'm working on that now. It's hard.
It is hard. I mean, even me, I can do it, but I have an issue with my big toe, and so for me, I had surgeries and stuff on it, and it's just not the same as my other one, and I can tell that it's not the same, and so it's just keep moving. I just keep trying it, just keep working it, and it gets better.
And I'm I did not even know that there were that many muscles, and it took me back. There was this time I saw a concert. This guy, he didn't have any arms.
Oh.
And he learned how to play guitar with his feet. And it was beautiful. I mean, it was you could close your eyes and think he was it's just to think that you can have that much dexterity with your toes.
Yeah, we are descended from ape, right? That's kind of the idea. So if you look at ape feet, they're crazy.
Yeah.
Obviously we're far, far evolved from that, but that's kind of
it's wild. Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Yeah, it was so fun.
For those of you who are watching, I'm going to send a link to Emma's website if you'd like to go and check her out. And save the date, 7th and 8th of January. She's going to post up in the studio in the front lobby just during classes. Yep. And you can just ask her some questions, and
come. Like I said, put me to my tests. Bring in all your questions. I'll be happy to answer. And then you know what? If I don't know all the perfect answers, I will be sure to get them to you. So
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, come to Bolt.
Yeah.
Or go to the gym. I don't care which one, but do it. Take care of your body. It's
the
important.
only one you have.
It's the only one you have. You gotta treat it well. Yeah. It does take time. It's
I feel like you're already coming here, so you're doing the right things. We're just trying to fine tune it now. So.
I know. Well, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard for them because coming here feels like a dance party, and not a workout.
Like the dudes will work out and have fun. I think this is a misconception.
Right, I know. And that's why I like bowls.
Yeah.
You know, because it's more fun. It's not as much fun as the dance parties, but it's more fun than like deadlifting at the gym.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Just again, shameless plug.
Yeah, I agree. When I came, like I said, when I did that dance class, I was like, I couldn't stop talking about it. I was like, oh my god, I missed this. I love performing. It's so fun.
It is fun.
I think it will be really, really nice to meet everybody. And if you have questions before and you want to ask me beforehand so I can do a little research or come a little bit more prepared, feel free just to email me at info@atomicpt.com.
Awesome.
Pretty easy. Or otherwise, Ashley can get in touch with me as well if you forget or don't want to email me. So yeah.
All right, thanks everyone.
Welcome. Thanks for having me. Can't wait to meet everybody.
Thanks everybody. If you made it to the end,
Yeah.
good job. Pat on the back. That was a long one.
Yeah.
Woo. All right.